week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm Pete Mezzetti. My guest this evening is Congressman Joe Courtney. Congressman.
Good to see you, my friend.
How are you, my friend? What's
I'm
new?
good. Well, spending a bunch of time home, obviously with the election a couple of weeks away.
Right.
And which I enjoy, getting around the district. So it's a pleasure to do our annual visit here today.
This is the annual visit.
Yep.
So what's new? What's new in the nation's capital? There's a lot new.
There's a lot new. I mean, obviously, the whole eyes of the world are on America, in terms of this pivotal election. We wrapped up in sort of last week or so of September and voted to keep the government open through December. And then when we go back for a lame duck session on November 12th, I mean, there's a lot of to-do items that we've got to get done. The federal budget itself.
Okay.
There's no question that, with Hurricane Milton and Helene, that FEMA and the Small Business Administration is going to need an infusion of help. The North Carolina damage is going to take, not just a couple of weeks or months. It's going to be years of recovery that's there. So those are kind of the immediate, right in our face kind of issues when we go back. And hopefully we'll get some other items that should be done, voted on, like the Farm Bill. Before the Congress adjourns. Obviously, after the election, a new Congress is going to be sworn in the first week of January.
Right.
And on January 6th, 2025, that Congress will certify the election results for president and vice president. So, everyone's like, I can't wait till the election's over on November 5th. It's not going to let up, actually, in terms of just, the pace. It affects everybody.
Right. Now, you and I were talking off camera that you actually went into Congress with Vice President candidate Walz. What's he like?
Tim's a great guy. So, that was the 2006 class. And you recall well, I know, that I had the landslide margin of 83 votes.
I remember that. I actually worked on that campaign.
Yes, I remember you were helped out a lot. Every bit helped, obviously. And so, everyone, my nickname was Landslide Joe, and, the recount was going on while we were still in orientation. But anyway, so I thought, that's pretty special, but Tim, who was part of that freshman class as well, he was elected in southern Minnesota, which is, completely rural area of Minnesota. They had not elected a Democrat since the early 1900s.
Wow.
And his race was like totally off the radar screen. The National Democratic Party, said, forget it. There's no way you're going to win a seat like this. And the Republican National Party basically said, this is a slam dunk. We don't have to do anything. Tim, who was a high school teacher, who it was his first run for office, just out-hustled his opponent. And you want to talk about a shocking dark horse victory. His was amazing that he was there. We served together on the Ag Committee, the Agriculture Committee, also Armed Services. He was, very active on the Veterans Committee because he's a 24-year veteran of the Minnesota National Guard. One of his big achievements was passing the Forever GI Bill, which the GI Bill, starting in 2010, created an educational benefit for either a spouse or dependent child. And again, the educational benefit was always kind of the cornerstone of the GI Bill. The problem was that there was a 15-year cutoff, in terms of your military service, that you had to use it or lose it.
Right.
So for a military service member who maybe started her family a little bit later, their child would be past the cutoff before they reached college age. Right. So Tim was the leader of what's called the Forever GI Bill, which basically keeps the door open so that service members' children can get the benefit of the educational benefit. And, again, it was that kind of work that really made him a really respected member, particularly in the military community and veterans community, but also, he worked together with people on both sides, worked on the farm bills, which obviously was bread and butter in southern Minnesota.
Yeah.
That's there. And so I think, it was a brilliant choice by the vice president to put someone in who's from the heartland of the country. It's not one of the bi-coastal sort of candidates that Democrats tend to draw from usually. It's the first non-lawyer to be on the national ticket in 50 years.
Really?
And I'm a lawyer, so, you know, I'm not an anti-lawyer by any stretch. But honestly, I mean, what a healthy thing, you know, to have someone whose life experience is a little bit different. So somebody who's up there talking about what it was like to be in charge of the lunchroom, or Coach Walls, but again, totally down to earth guy. If he was sitting right here, you know, it'd just be this, you know, really, you know, he would be very attentive and you know, focused on the people he's around, and he's not one of these snobs that's always looking over your shoulder, see if somebody else more important is in the room or something like that. He's just a really down to earth. His wife, Gwen, also a great person. She was a teacher. So, I mean, they're going to be great friends of military families, you know, of agriculture in rural America, and obviously, you know, educators, because, you know, he's somebody who really understands the challenges that, particularly in public schools, teachers face.
Exactly. Now let's talk about early voting. I know we started early voting here in the state of Connecticut recently.
First time ever.
Yeah, I know.
So, yeah, I shared an apartment for a long time with a member of Congress from Colorado, and they start early voting like a month before the election, and they've had that on the books for decades. And, you know, despite some of the critics of it, I mean, Democrats get elected, Republicans get elected. I mean, there is nothing that favors one party or the other with early voting. It's just a way of giving people an option that will increase voter turnout. I mean, this country, you know, in a presidential election will still be below 70% of eligible voters voting. I mean, you know this very well from your mom. And, you know, you look at countries like England or Australia, you know, I mean, their numbers are much higher. So having early voting, I just think it gives people an opportunity who, you know, maybe have, you know, health issues or work schedule issues, you know, the ability to actually plan better for their vote and get it done early. And, you know, then you don't get those annoying phone calls.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you know, obviously, I think we've got a great system to make sure the tabulation occurs, you know, pretty quickly on election night.
Yeah. You think we're going to know on election night who?
I think Connecticut will know for sure. I think, you know, particularly California. I mean, we know. I think, you know, Vice President's going to win California, but a lot of the House seats that are out there, those will take days and days before we know, you know, the outcome of some of those races. And the House is so evenly split right now. It's a 4-vote margin that the Republicans have. That you know, those races in California, you know, will be probably the difference between, you know, who has the gavel.
Right. Exactly. And as far as bipartisanship goes, let's talk about.
Sure. So, I mean, the one thing, there's obviously a lot of issues. You know, we had debate with my opponent, and, you know, been at forums with him and also other settings without him, you know, talking to chambers of commerce, you know, folks in education, schools, you know, just a whole variety of settings there. And people have strong opinions about different issues like prescription drugs, student loans, you know, what's happening in Ukraine and Middle East, et cetera. But the one thing that I think is like consistent thread is just people are really worried about how divided our country is and how, you know, in Congress, that's kind of like, you know, the, you know, center of that whole division and polarization that's there. So when I was in the General Assembly in Hartford for 8 years, representing a little district in Vernon, I was voted Democrat most admired by Republicans by Connecticut Magazine. They did a poll of members that were there. And you know, over time, I'm actually kind of proud of that because it kind of sends a signal to people that I grew up in a Republican family. I don't think Republicans bite, you know, and particularly when you have close control of you know, the House and the Senate, you've got to be able to reach across the aisle to try and actually get things done. So, you know, on the Armed Services Committee, which I've been sitting on, you know, I've worked together with my Republican colleagues. That's helped with the Navy budgets. That's helped electric boat that's helped with all the hiring, that's going on in this region. It's not a debate club down there. You don't go down there just to argue and, go on cable shows or go on social media. I mean, at some point you've got to get stuff done. And that's a message that, I really try to point to with people. And also Georgetown University has an institute called the Lugar Institute.
Okay.
That tracks bipartisan, actions by members of Congress, whether it's your voting record, whether you're co-sponsoring bills with people from the other side of the aisle, doing dear colleague letters together and stuff. So I have the highest bipartisan index for Connecticut's delegation. And as I said, I think, that's something that in Eastern Connecticut, is important to people, that, you're just not going down there to, as I said, just, performance art, and they want people who are actually, focused on results in terms of just kind of going on the floor of the House and having tantrums.
Exactly. Would you mind sticking around for another segment?
Sure.
All right, we'll be right back.
Smart TVs and streaming services have taken over the television industry. VSC TV is proud to announce our presence on Apple TV and Roku to make watching your favorite shows even easier. You can access this service by downloading the Cablecast ScreenWeave app. Then choose Valley Shore Community TV from the list of channels. Select VSC TV Live to watch our channel in full HD. Or pick a show from our on-demand video library. VSC TV is your local Connecticut Midshore Valley digital connection.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. Sitting here with Congressman Courtney. Congressman, welcome back.
Great to be here.
Thanks for sticking around. So, Congressman, we were talking a little bit about what's going on with electric boat. I was wondering if maybe we can open up this segment talking about EB.
Sure, absolutely. So, obviously locally, people are very focused on the workforce and hiring down at EB. And in that area, it's been a really strong 2 years. Last year, they hired 5,300 people.
Wow.
Between Groton and Quonset Point, which is where they have the other facility in Rhode Island. About 2/3 of that is in Connecticut and 1/3 is in Rhode Island in terms of those numbers. That's the highest number in the history of the company, which is 120 years old.
Wow.
I mean, even higher than during World War II or the peak of the Cold War. This year, they've hit about 3,000 new hires, and I check every day. It's my morning box score to see how many listings they're on, and it's about 859 openings. Literally as we're sitting here talking this afternoon, and so that's obviously very strong. The demand for submarines is just something that both Congress and the Navy are really strongly in favor of because of just what's sort of going on in the world and the fact that our fleet is so old, that we have that was built up during the Cold War. So the need to get production moving as fast as possible to satisfy, that requirement for the Navy is really the big focus right now. Now, EB is doing extremely well, like I said, in terms of the hiring, and the retention is really good. The new hires are actually sticking around. Their partner shipyard in Virginia, Huntington Ingalls, who does roughly about 50% of the work on Virginia-class submarines, they've been having a harder time. They also build aircraft carriers down there, so they're kind of pulled in two different directions in terms of their shipyard workers that are there. So their delivery of the modular components that get welded together are slow right now. So they need to do better in terms of just the job training programs that they have set up. We've got a fantastic one here, the manufacturing pipeline that operates out of Norwich and Groton, and it's an accelerated, fast program, 10 weeks for a welder, 8 weeks for a machinist, inside and outside machinist. And again, the curriculum is just right in terms of somebody who's never touched a welding torch in their life, can go in and come out with a basic level of proficiency so they're good enough to be hired. And but it's fast, and that's what they need, obviously, is to get people sort of moving through the process that's there. So, there's a lot of orders that are booked in right now, so the workload is going to be there. But as I said, that we've got to get the pace, of Virginia up to where Connecticut is if we really want to get the production levels that they're looking for. But these are good jobs. I mean, the last year, the Metal Trades Union negotiated a labor contract. It's a 5-year contract, and it increased the salaries by about 40% over 5 years. Good benefits. Very diverse now. I was out shaking hands at 5 o'clock in the morning yesterday in Groton, and but I mean, it's a different kind of workforce now. When I first campaigned, when we worked, I mean, it was pretty much, baby boomer era folks. A lot, very heavily male and white. Today, it is Gen Zers and millennials and Gen Xers, and it's a lot of women going to work there, doing the metal trades, and definitely much more diverse ethnically. So it's pretty exciting actually to see that because these are people who are going to be sticking around for a while. These are not jobs; these are careers.
Right. And let's talk about job growth.
Sure. Well, I mean, overall, setting aside EV for a minute, I mean, the Norwich New London labor market in 2023 was the fastest growing in Connecticut, which is, has not always been the case in the past. This year, it's doing well. It's definitely in the, the plus territory. Last year, it was the second fastest in New England. But again, it's not all in the shipyard. I mean, there's definitely a lot of other, growth that's happening in other sectors. I mean, one area that we're really I'm very passionate about in terms of addressing is the fact that our healthcare sector, we just need more staff, more nurses. A lot of burnout because of COVID for folks. Actually, there's some things that the hospitals can do better in terms of the workplace violence. I mean, they have a lot of pretty unruly patients and families that are coming through there. And my wife's a nurse practitioner, as I think you remember.
That's right.
She's still at it at Children's Hospital, but this issue of not feeling safe in the workforce is something that's very serious. And on the Education and Labor Committee that I work on, I have a bill that I've been working on to fix that problem. We got it through the House actually twice. Keeps running into a bit of a stone wall in the Senate, but it's really important. But again, the infrastructure bill is pumping new jobs into the region. The new Old Saybrook Rail Bridge. Right here, at the Connecticut River. It's the biggest Amtrak project in the infrastructure bill. It's $1 billion project. It's going to take 4 years to build, and the building trades are very excited about creating a real stable horizon for all their members that are part of that. And there's other, Gold Star Bridge, that's being upgraded because it was not that safe actually. No. The northbound lane at least, and the swing bridge. And East Haddam, if you're up there now, you already can see it's well underway in terms of the construction. And there's just a lot of other projects that are taking place. Housing is the one thing that we've got to do better in terms of getting more supply out there. I mean, rents are high, and particularly in the starter home sector of the housing market, it's really hard to even, they barely exist anymore, because the prices have gotten so haywire. And again, I think Kamala Harris's plans on housing are really good and something that, the state of Connecticut, along with the rest of the country, would really benefit from.
Now, I also see that they're working on a bridge project over by Costco in East Lyme.
That's right. That's another infrastructure project that's there. I mean, you see those green signs just about everywhere. I mean, one that I'm really excited about is a new train station up in Enfield. So that line that goes from Hartford up to Springfield, they used to have a train station. In fact, Harry Truman, when he did the Give 'em Hell, Harry campaign, the Whistle Stop tour, where he was on the back of the train, doing a thing, and he stopped in Enfield.
Really?
Yeah, it went
Oh, I didn't
back
know
in the
that.
day. But they tore the train station down.
They did?
Yes.
Oh, no.
So,
Oh, no.
so now we're going to build a new one, and we got the money to do it through the infrastructure bill. And that section of Enfield, which is called Thompsonville,
Okay.
it's a pretty depressed area there. But there's no question you can get a ripple effect when you have that kind of an investment in a facility that's going to bring foot traffic into the train station.
Right. Now, let's talk about one of everybody's favorite topics, prescription drugs.
Right. So from the day I got elected, which is a while ago now, the one issue that has always been consistent in terms of mail and calls coming into our office is the just crazy high prices of prescription drugs. And in 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act, which President Biden spearheaded and not one Republican voted for in the House or Senate, finally empowered the government to negotiate lower prices in the Medicare program. Medicare is seniors, people on disabilities that are covered by Medicare. It's about 75 million Americans. And right off the bat, they cut insulin to $35 a month, a 2/3 savings. And they also just negotiated the first 10 medications that, again, the savings in terms of the new price that the government's going to pay through Medicare and the patients will pay is a 40 to 80% cut. I mean, that's real money.
Wow.
And starting in 2025, there's going to be a cap for Medicare patients of out-of-pocket costs for the whole calendar year of $2,000. And I was reading a story today about a couple in North Dakota who their out-of-pocket was $6,000 last year. I mean, they're immediately going to save $4,000, because of the new cap that's going into place. The question I get asked from a lot of people is, well, that's great for people on Medicare. How about the rest of us?
Exactly.
Which is a great question. So there's a bill in Congress, which I'm a co-sponsor of, the Lowering Drug Costs for American Families Act, which would extend those cost savings for medications to people of working age, whether it's on your employer health plan, that those lower drug prices, and that would lower the premium costs and lower the co-payments for people, just like it's doing for Medicare. And it would not be mandatory. It wouldn't force you to necessarily have to do that if you were the Pete Mezzetti Incorporated within the workforce. But at least it would give you the option of doing that. And again, I think that if you look at the cost of healthcare in terms of premiums, the cost of medications is the biggest cost driver in terms of why they keep going up and up and up every year.
And people probably have to think, okay, am I going to eat or am I going to have to pay for medication?
Or cut a pill in half, which is not safe. And
No.
I think that drug negotiation bill is just a huge step forward. ARP. When that bill passed, they had a banner headline that it took 60 years to get that bill through, that concept through of having the government negotiate lower prices. So it's a big deal.
And that takes effect in 2025, correct?
So yes, that's right. And the cap for out-of-pocket kicks in 2025. Again, for somebody who's got a chronic illness like MS or whatever, that cap is life-changing.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've had the MS Society, they visit my office all the time, and I mean, they get emotional talking about just how it just will just transform their lives.
Right. We've got a little bit more time left, so what else we want to touch on?
So again, the housing issue, which we've mentioned, is obviously a big one for I think the economy in the region. But education is another big piece.
Okay.
One thing that is now starting to echo a lot more in the campaign, President Trump and some of the candidates in swing states that are Republican side have all been talking about abolishing the Department of Education, which, if you look at the polling, the public says, bad idea.
Yeah, right.
Okay. And the reason why I would say it's a bad idea is the Department of Education funds K through 12 school districts through a program called Title I, which helps needy students in lower income areas. So, some of the communities along the shoreline in this part of the state probably are not real big Title I recipients, but cities like New London, Norwich, distressed areas with, small property tax bases who
Right.
can't fund the schools. I mean, getting rid of the Department of Education in Title I would be absolutely catastrophic.
Yeah, that would not be good.
And the other is that, when we talk about EB and trying to skill people up to go take these jobs, the Department of Education funds what's called the Perkins Grant Program,
Yeah.
which that's for the technical schools, the trade schools, but it also goes to non-trade schools. So Westbrook High School,
Yeah.
I was over there the other day. We cut a ribbon for a new welding lab. So they'll be able to graduate about 50 welders a year out of the high school. No, it's awesome. But the Perkins Grant from Washington, D.C. was what helped fund the construction of that new lab, that new welding lab that's there. So, a lot of people, again, like Trump, they talk about the Department of Education like it's this completely wasteful agency. But the fact is that it's very relevant and very local, like Westbrook High School.
Right.
And there are other schools like Bacon Academy up in Colchester, Turtelot High School up in Thompson. They've all been using Perkins Grant money to create these new career pathway programs for students there. So as a member of the Education and Workforce Committee, obviously, I'm somebody who's going to be right at the front lines if that issue, God forbid, is before us to wipe out the Department of Education. But Connecticut is a state that depends on investing in people. We don't drill for oil or mine coal or have large farms with commodity crops. I mean, we're successful because of the people and their skills and what's between their ears. And that's what education and job training are all about.
Congressman Courtney, we're out of time.
Okay.
Thanks for coming down.
Okay,
We'll see you
Peter.
soon.
Yep. Thank you.
On behalf of Congressman Joe Courtney, I'm Pete Mezzetti. Thanks. Good night. We'll see you next week.
That was good. That was,
Good show.
yeah.